Okay, let me just turn my phone off. It looks like, gents, we are live. Lovely to see you. How are things? Good weekend?
Yeah, not bad. Well, you can't do much, but
apart from stay in the snow, and that's about it. And Jack, how are things with you? All good?
Yeah, not too bad. I just moved to my new house, so it is a mix of excitement and a lot of things going on at the moment. But yeah, all good.
Very good. So essentially, I'll keep the comment open in case anyone wants to ask some questions as we go. But the most important thing is essentially, together with Honcho and Quickfire, both having a specialism in Shopify, both doing a lot in this space, we were really keen to get you on today to talk about SEO and how to unlock the SEO benefits within Shopify. Because actually, as a development agency, this is what we get asked 9 times out of 10 when it comes to replatforming. People might be on M2, which for those listening is Magento 2, or they might just be on an original Magento 1 installation. They might be somewhere else. Let me just see. It looks like we've got a challenge streaming to LinkedIn. We're having trouble streaming to this, maybe initially on LinkedIn's end. Please check if okay for a while. You're on LinkedIn. Let me just check this to make sure that it's working.
Yeah, no worries.
Dun, dun, dun. Waiting for broadcast. The joys. Yeah. There's me. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to be on LinkedIn Live. And I'm like, actually, I'm not live here. Bizarre. Okay. I've got a bit of a tick now, it seems. You are live. Okay. Maybe you're working. Okay. We'll carry on. Let me very quickly see if we are streaming, if I can. I don't want to give away loads of great content and then be like, oh, by the way, guys, thanks for your time, but it wasn't streaming. So, okay, I've got a bit of a tick now. There we are. Sounds like we're good. So we're back up. So essentially, just as we were recapping, we're getting asked all the time around Shopify, its SEO benefits, and actually why people should replatform from Magento or OpenCart or PrestaShop or any of them. And so really appreciate you guys at Honcho joining us today. What I'd like to do before we start is just for our audience that perhaps haven't heard of Honcho, perhaps you could just give us a 2-minute overview around Honcho, its specialism, and kind of your experiences with Shopify, and then we can dive in. I've been prepping some questions over the weekend. I'd love to go through with you guys.
Yeah, cool, sure, absolutely. So Honcho, we are a search and social marketing agency primarily. We've existed for over 12 years now, mainly born out of Chris's kind of, initial idea of creating a space where, creating a workspace where people are a bit more relaxed, but also, stay professional and deliver what needs to be delivered. He had obviously he was coming from a more corporate background. So this why we wanted to create Honcho was like a place where people can come in and deliver the right kind of work that people would value. Especially within the search and paid social, within search and social, we have SEO, outreach, and digital PR, which is what we are pushing aggressively this year. Then we've got on the paid front, we've got all the normal paid channels, including paid social, Amazon marketing, and social, all the social channels. We are roughly around 25, 26 people headcount, but all of them are specialists, pretty much. So whoever speaks to us directly to the expert. Shopify, I mean, traditionally we've been in technical SEO and on-site SEO, focusing on platforms has been one of the key kind of areas for us to look into, and we got in quite early on. Shopify, has gone through the development. And, I mean, as a development agency, you must have seen how it has kind of grown over the years. Quite challenging initially, but as things are moving in the right direction, in 2021, we are hoping that Shopify becomes more flexible, and the solutions that we had to put extra effort in, are now available built in as a platform. So we've had good success with Shopify over the last few months and a couple of years. So happy to share more around that as we go through the session. Really.
So that's perfect. Thank you very much. I think I really want to get started with just understanding and again, tell me if I'm being too cheeky at the outset. But in your opinion, is SEO a must for any e-commerce business, or actually can you still be successful without SEO? And I ask this because, again, a lot of our customers look at Google Shopping potentially as an outlet, and they think about social selling. You know what? If I've got some ads set up on social and I've got some ads set up via Google, perhaps, and maybe a bit of video marketing, perhaps this is all I need to do, and I don't need to tick that SEO pillar. Would you say that's fair, or actually is that nonsense?
Yeah, I mean, I can start, Jack, and then you can kind of feed it. So I think getting foundations right is absolutely crucial. Just outside of the normal kind of basic setup, cost of advertising is generally going up year on year, and I think if you can afford to set something up which will deliver sales in a more cost-effective manner, then absolutely the right thing to do. The other reason, which I feel quite strongly about, especially these days, is integration. Like anything you for SEO, you talk about the architecture, and Jack can potentially shed more light on that. Or you're talking about taxonomies, setting up the feeds and all of that, because it's all kind of being merged together as kind of seen as like one marketing effort. I think whatever you do from your point of view will benefit you immensely for paid marketing as well. And but at the same time, I mean, I do understand the pressure. Like if you have investors kind of asking for return on investment as soon as possible, as a startup, as a business, when you're starting off, that's quite crucial as well. So we totally appreciate that paid has to kind of come in and start delivering immediately. But if you can, the recommendation is definitely to start kind of building both sides of things. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think bring it kind of back to Shopify. One of the beauties of the platform is that it kind of integrates with everything. I mean, out the box, you've got the Google Shopping kind of app, which plugs straight in. I know there are a few issues with Bing, but I mean, I'll leave it to everyone else's own opinions on what Bing's like, any other search engine. But yeah, like kind of, I'll reiterate what Syed was saying is that, yeah, building up your SEO and your organic kind of foundations and activating that strategy in the long term is definitely going to be kind of valuable. But making use of everything that's available to you, whether it be social campaigns, email, or paid, again, equally as useful and definitely something to kind of get working straight away. Kind of a few examples that we've got. We work with big retailers, kind of established, that have been around, 60, 70 plus years, and they saw some great kind of returns on email marketing because they had such a tight user base. So whereas I think we would love to be able to say, SEO is that silver bullet which is going to get you all the traffic and revenue you need, it is about mixing in kind of everything and making sure it's all working together.
Yeah, I think the one thing to add there is like if you leave it for too long, obviously SEO, as everyone kind of in this space already knows, although I hate saying this, SEO is long term, but it does take some time to kind of bed in, and and if you're in a competitive space, I guess it's definitely worth starting early on if you can afford to. Getting the strong foundations is absolutely critical if you can, essentially.
Thank you, guys. I mean, that's a wonderfully thorough answer. I think that the next steps, like let's say we can convince our clients to go with SEO from the start, and I know a lot of people see it as an optional extra, and actually I'm trying to reverse people's understanding to say, it isn't a nice to have, but it's an essential. And if you're building something for a longer term e-commerce success, then it's certainly not something you can leave. And until later. You should bake it in from the very outset. I think if we do get on that mindset and people are like, okay, let's give it a go. My next question is really, where do you start when it comes to Shopify? I know and people that are listening will probably know that at the bottom of each page, you've got an area to edit some metadata. So maybe you can add your titles and kind of descriptions and things like that. But actually, where else do you start when it comes to Shopify SEO? If you had to give me a top 5 tips of where to start, where do we begin?
Shall I go start?
Yeah,
yeah. So I think, as you said, the foundational element, I mean, which are kind of not to kind of muddy things, but yeah, the super kind of basics are the titles, tags, meta descriptions, on-page content, and they're all obviously filled that you can obviously edit straight out of the box. Moving on to more, I wouldn't say advanced, but kind of management of crawling and indexation for search engines. Obviously, one of the bigger known, not problems as such, but flags, I'll call it, for Shopify is the amount of potential duplicate content and wasted crawl budget that happens with faceted navigation or kind of subcategories. So again, getting something to sort that out is obviously a great place to start. Really just making sure that what you're putting on site is being seen and it's not kind of suffering from any kind of bloating or anything like that. And then just moving through to kind of, again, more regular and standard things, which sometimes come with your theme, but like schema, implementing that either through, like I said, usually comes with a theme, but sometimes you can do it kind of manually or create your own ruling through your just back-end codes, all the way through to things like imagery as well. Obviously making sure your site isn't suffering from slow load times because you're uploading, megabytes and megabytes of imagery or video and things like that. So I'd say it's pretty standard to any other site, to be honest, but there are a few quirks when it comes to Shopify, and obviously we do discuss them a little bit more detail in the white paper as well. But yeah, I'd say it's pretty much standard fare when we kind of first start up with Shopify and getting started with SEO.
Jack, that's excellent. I think quite reassuring for our audience listening. And if you do have any questions, please do put them in the comments as we go. And I'll ask the guys as we kind of go through today's session. But like you say, first things first, the Shopify white paper that we've collectively done, and I'll make sure is in the comments to this kind of LinkedIn Live, actually will show people a lot of what to do and what not to do. But actually, the really reassuring thing is it doesn't matter if you're used to WordPress or you're used to a different platform, Magento, OpenCart, PressShop, the kind of list goes on. Actually, a lot of this stuff is fairly standard. It's not like Shopify have gone way off track and gone to something truly unique. Actually, you can still edit your kind of on-page metadata on individual pages, etc. That all sounds perfect. Now, in terms of submission to kind of webmaster tools and connecting up and stuff like that, Jack, perhaps you could just share a little bit around that. So let's say you are user A, you've got an e-commerce store, you're really happy with it. However, you're now looking to do that final 5 yards, connecting it up to analytics and search console, etc. Again, nice and easy to do.
Yeah, again, all out the box. So it is as simple as getting your tracking codes and dropping them into, again, the predefined fields within your, I think it's the settings. So yeah, super easy. No messing around typically, unless you're obviously doing something a little bit more bespoke, should we say. But yeah, from our experience, again, anyone that knows any of the previous platforms we talked about, or shouldn't have any problems.
I think one thing we struggle to sometimes do on something like a LinkedIn Live is actually understand, again, we're talking to multiple audiences, right? There might be an e-com store listening that's got maybe 5,000 SKUs and another e-commerce store listening that's got 500,000 SKUs. Now, with those two businesses, obviously massively different in terms of probably headcount, revenue, etc., are there totally different out-the-box strategies, or actually do both have exactly the same fundamentals, and then do we customize once we've got those in place?
Yeah, I can tell you that. I guess where I'd start with is again understanding the categorization of the website. I think like outside of the fundamentals, for a smaller website, it's perhaps a little bit more of a simpler task. But as you scale and if you've got a number of products, the challenges often multiply because you're talking about quite a lot of research there. We often, within SEO, we often start with keyword research, and we develop those themes, and then you have, subcategorization, and then you create a structure around that. So I think the fundamentals of what you do would probably remain same, but how you go about it and how in depth you want to go about it, and the opportunities potentially are different. If you're more established, sometimes it's really hard to find that niche where you can really own the market, but that's what the research does. And equally, I think the challenges that Jack mentioned early on around handling duplicate content, for example, obviously the rules would be similar or same, but essentially you're talking about handling a problem which is much bigger than a 500 SKU website, essentially. So yeah, I mean, fundamentally, the way you would handle SEO would potentially be similar, but it's just the scale of everything.
Sure, I think that's perfect. I'm really curious. Obviously, SEO is changing at a ridiculously fast rate, and I see even algorithm updates in the last kind of few weeks. And I'm really interested to know from you guys, does it change platform to platform, and therefore do you need to understand how the algorithm affects Shopify versus how the algorithm affects WooCommerce or then Magento or whatever, or actually is it a one size fits all and it's fairly sector agnostic?
Yeah, I would say most algorithm updates, are fairly agnostic. Sure, there will be some platforms which, again, suffer from more inherent issues, which, again, it's worth looking out for. But yeah, I mean, for example, we've got kind of a kind of performance update coming out very soon, or a known performance update coming out very soon. So again, that's going to be across all sites, ensuring that your site is obviously rendering as quickly as possible and delivering to your users as most efficiently and as fast as it can, really. So yeah, I think that.
I think so the signals for specific industries can sometimes be different. Like, sometimes you notice that retail generally is quite fast paced, and the developments happening there on that side is quite fast, and it's not because like Jack said, not because the algorithm would treat the websites different in different sectors. It's just how things are set up in an e-commerce, like I said, is very fast paced, and generally, because there's more money involved, suddenly you see Google, Facebook, they're all very interested, and the development of the tools perhaps in that space will be different. The launch of certain things might be a bit early then compared to a lead generation kind of business, for instance. So the way they roll it out, obviously it's very agnostic, like Jack said, but the way the sites react and the sector reacts could be the kind of basis of why you see things differently in different spaces. So algorithm wise, yeah, there's a standard kind of rollout.
So, Jack, let's play a little game here. I'm going to pretend to be an e-commerce director. I've just been bolted into a brand, and I'm really excited to take on my new role. I've carried out an audit as part of my interview process, and I realised that actually the site is really letting itself down. And across all the different kind of channels in which we're going to market, the website has really fallen behind. Now, I know the solution would be call Honcho, get it sorted, and that's lovely. But actually, before we get to that stage, what is it I do if I notice that my website's got a problem, and it's not so much structurally, in that case called Quickfire, but actually no, there's something SEO related? Where would you say people go to kind of diagnose and then essentially identify the errors to then either fix some themselves, or if it's a bigger piece, to come to an agency like Honcho?
I think that's what you said. I think you kind of almost got the answer. It's understanding where the problem lies, and if you have done an audit and you kind of know, or you need further analysis or a second pair of eyes, that's where, yeah, you usually speak to an agency, or in some cases a freelancer on your budget. So yeah, I guess my answer would just be, yeah, obviously show us what you've got. Let's have a little look. We'll compare it against obviously what we're seeing and what we've seen success in over the last year or however long, and put it against our templates and audits, and then kind of create a plan from there. Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
very
going
case by case.
to jump in there, because actually I know that a lot of people watch these kind of LinkedIn lives and go, this is great, but I want something that I can take away today and go and do on my e-commerce store. And therefore, wonderful that we're saying auditing, but where are we auditing? What platforms are we using? Is it free? Is it costed? That kind of thing. So I literally, as an e-commerce director, I want today, listen to this live, go to my website, copy and paste it into some kind of program and run a report to see the health check. Where do you recommend that I go?
Okay, so yeah, we were talking about specifics. Then there's a couple places. Obviously, Google has their own complete suite of testing tools for the sites. You've got Lighthouse reports, page performance reports that you need to go plug in a URL. Run it across not just your homepage, but all the core templates that you have. So whether it be product listing pages, the product page itself, your homepage, even down to kind of location pages if you have physical stores and that kind of thing, and really compare how your page templates are performing across the site. That way, obviously, give you what's going wrong. Like we said before, a common thing is obviously imagery being, as in file size, too large. In terms of targeting, getting more into kind of SEO, then we typically lean on kind of two industry standard tools, so SEMrush or SEMrush, and then Ahrefs. Both, I think, offer free trials. So if you were to go today, you go sign up to those. Again, plug your website in, see where you're ranking, see what keywords you've got, see what landing pages are looking like. Ahrefs also gives you a domain score, which obviously aggregates backlink data, showing how authoritative you are. So yeah, those kind of all-in-one tools, for example, can give you a good understanding of what's happening, how Google or other search engines are seeing the site and return them in SERPs. And if you really want to go that one step further, kind of get into the nitty-gritty, if you're quite top level at the moment, you've got things like Screaming Frog, which obviously crawl the site and give you all the technical kind of not recommendations, but all the technical flags on site happening at the moment. And then on from that, if you want to start kind of getting into it in terms of enterprise, you've got things like Deep Crawl, On Crawl, Botify, which can really start getting into the nitty-gritty of technical and
that is awesome. This is the kind of exact thing we want, right? So e-commerce directors or people within the world of e-commerce can listen to this and go, great, love the theory, but actually now I can walk away and from today plug something in. Okay, great. So they've done that. They've completed the audit. They've found out a few challenges. In terms of, and I get every situation is going to be different, but there are any other tools, again, you've said around image optimization is one thing you've touched upon a few times. Are there any apps that you guys have come across in the kind of world of Shopify that you think normally that's a fairly good place to start, get your images compressed, or do you actually suggest that maybe they compress the images before they come into the platform?
Yeah, I think it's looking at text. I think, again, I know we just said we don't like to say everything's different, but everything is different, unfortunately. And depending on the resources you have available to you, I think generally speaking, apps, especially like image compression apps are good, but you can typically obviously do it better with your own compression and obviously looking at them, reviewing them as you're saving them off. So as your marketing department's obviously getting them ready for web, implementing a process, which then obviously is more web compliant than just saving down a 3 meg JPEG, for example.
For sure. I'm just trying to think of, again, some of the kind of acronyms and keywords that are banded around the industry when it comes to e-commerce optimization, and then really trying to debunk those so we can know, okay, well, actually that is a bit of a myth, or actually that's really easy to do. One of the ones that I'm constantly seeing when we're putting together proposal submissions and things like that is around schema markup and local SEO. Perhaps you could just touch a little bit around schema markup, the possibilities to do that within Shopify, and then also just touch on a little bit of local SEO.
Yeah, no worries. So schema within Shopify, we typically take it into the code level. So actually editing your theme to actually create that and obviously surface that on site using individual JSON files. So we'll create that and apply it to the page templates themselves. So for example, if it's product schema, pulling in the price, availability, all directly from the kind of attributes that you're putting into the back end. So like I said, what the price is, what the stock levels are like, the naming, the colors, the sizes, for example. That is something which we take to that level just because it is important for SEO. Obviously, it returns rich results, or kind of whatever you want to call it, into, depending on what you're calling it, into SERPs. So things like review stars, prices, in stock, that kind of thing. And then, so you got anything to add to the schema? Or should I just go straight into local?
No, I think that pretty much covers everything. I think again, like, you know, Shopify as it's developing, I think there's a lot of standardized stuff like coming out as well. So on top of the customization that you do, or, you know, before the customization you do, you'd probably see some of the stuff in there already.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you. I think one of the things I'm keen to understand is, okay, we've looked at local SEO, perhaps we've touched upon schema, but actually as you're going bigger and perhaps you're a bigger e-commerce store listening now, you're now looking at international SEO and potentially with Shopify Plus and your multi-store setup. How is that managed, and how does Shopify kind of look after those looking to optimize their sites internationally?
So there was actually quite a big push from them, I think, at the end of last year, updating the platform to support multi-currency, multi-location, that kind of thing. So coming out of that, again, I believe it's all kind of near enough out the box, and obviously you don't need to do too much kind of work to allow it to support that. So a short answer, but it's all pretty much handled.
Yeah, no, again, I think that's the beauty of the platform, because hreflang, for example, setup, and Jack, you know, I mean, we both know how tough it is to set it up and get it right, because you know, when you think you got it right, and especially if you've got, you know, multiple markets, you know, more than 5-10 markets, it gets really hard to kind of manage it and keep everything in sync. But with Shopify kind of pushing it and recognizing that this is a pain, is a tick in its own right, isn't it? Like for SEO, contrary to what, you know, some people believe, that, you know, SEO is not right on their agenda that much. I think especially with this one, it's massively beneficial to how they're kind of planning to handle it.
Now, gents, this is quite a controversial topic, and actually one I'm going to go 2 foot in, like my kind of usual style, but actually Shopify isn't right for everybody. And while we kind of becoming Shopify experts and working more and more with Shopify, it's really important that we don't just crowbar somebody into a Shopify solution if it's not right for them. What situations do you see where perhaps Shopify isn't the right solution, and maybe a Magento or something else may be a better solution for that particular business?
So I've got quite an example unless you want to go, Syed. So we're working with one of the largest kind of flooring and wall manufacturers, and again, they want something which is like a retail site, but at the end they don't want a checkout process. They want to sign up, they want to, you know, get the contact details, they want a lead basically, and obviously to follow that up while still having some sort of e-commerce functionality to order samples and that kind of thing. So when you're at that level, which is a bit more bespoke and obviously not, you know, can't be kind of ported from someone selling clothes to someone selling like car parts, that's where you need that kind of level of customization, both on the kind of the front end in terms of what the user's doing, and then also when you're looking at kind of the back end in terms of how you're categorizing and how you're databasing all your products. So that's where we'd say, you know, you wouldn't look at Shopify, you know, as it is an out and out kind of selling platform.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and certainly something we've been saying to our clients is, depending on if it's e-com focused or what really is the end goal, and if it's e-commerce with content as a secondary kind of purpose, and great, maybe we'll go down the Shopify route. If it really is a blog that sells the odd product or something that's mainly content and, like say, lead gen focused, then perhaps a WordPress, WooCommerce, a Magento, or whatever might be an alternative to look at. Good, as long as I've got that covered there and no one thinks I'm some kind of work for Shopify. So it's really important we give people an option rather than having them into one solution. In terms of a rather personal thing here, and certainly from mine, I guess slightly selfishly, but I've always been fascinated by the off-site kind of optimization when it comes to SEO, and actually how we can build links and things like that. Now, I know that many SEO agencies see this sometimes as their secret sauce, and so perhaps not telling us every single tool, but actually, again, Ecom Directed have done the report, right, okay, I can see we're really poor here in terms of domain authority, and perhaps we need to create some more backlinks. Where do I go to do that? Are there certain tools on the market that you would recommend that you go, okay, if you want to create some high quality backlinks, go and start over here? Chris is going to kill us, right, for giving away all the industry secrets. But it's my job to ask the difficult questions. So if we can share something, then excellent.
No, I think with links, there's no tool out there that will give you. I mean, gone are the days when people used to spin articles and create links, and that would create some sort of value. Although there would be some people out there who would still argue that there is some of that stuff that exists and works potentially, but I think the way we secure links is almost has to be like, or it has to be natural. I think it comes from the more of an idea of like content marketing. You need to have relationship with journalists. You need to kind of come up with the right angles, or do a lot of research to find those angles, and take those kind of aspects or data to journalists and see if they would be interested in talking about the data or the angle that you found, basically. And once you've got that kind of coverage, then hopefully you can use a similar approach to then push it out there. Now you could push links or create links at a campaign level. So you could do like a big push that will deliver, or potentially deliver. You almost can't guarantee, unfortunately, in this space, but chances are that if you're putting in a lot of effort, and if you've got the data right, and you've got a strong insight, then you would potentially get a story that will stick, and you'll get a lot of coverage across the web. The other side of things is to support like an ongoing SEO strategy, is to have like mid-level ongoing ideas that are not perhaps big budget, but equally effective on an ongoing basis. And that's where it's really important for outreach digital PR guys to integrate their efforts with the SEO strategy, because SEO guys can tell them, this is the focus, these are the topics that would drive value or shift the bottom line, and then digital PR guys can go away, do their work, research, find the data inside, craft a story, take it to the journalists, and hopefully get the links back and get the necessary coverage for that. So unfortunately, there's no kind of tool out there that would do it for you. It's more in the ideas these days.
That's absolutely fine. I think I'm really interested to understand, when looking for SEO agencies. Now, I'd need you guys to try and be unbiased and take the Honcho app for 2 seconds, okay? So someone's looking for an SEO agency. They've done all they can on site, and perhaps they're now thinking, right now I need someone to support us. They're looking for an SEO agency. What are the things to look for versus the things to avoid? Again, anyone that says you'll be page one tomorrow, and I'm sure we've all seen those emails landing in the inbox, perhaps is one to stay away from, and especially if they can do it for 50 quid a month or something. But actually, I'm keen to learn a little bit more than that. What is it you look for in a great SEO agency, and what are those things that are kind of red flags that you go, you know what, I'm not too sure?
Yeah, I think it's definitely not an easy process. At the end of the day, this is a people business more than anything else. I think, getting, first of all, I think, the brief you put out there, or any potential client that puts the brief out there, you have to check whether the response is comprehensive enough or not. And once that's done, I think it's more about kind of finding the chemistry between the team, because you have to work with people, right? And you have to make sure that you can get on with people, and it's the right culture, right fit for you, essentially. In terms of specifically for SEO, I'd probably say, because of the nature of the channel, people can or tend to overpromise things. Forecasting is Jack, you know, I mean, forecasting is a very hot topic within SEO, and it's not completely, the process is not completely defined as such, and everyone kind of takes their own approach, and that means, in a pitch, or in like just in a normal day-to-day working, even when you're setting up the strategy, there's a tendency to overpromise just to win the contract, essentially. And then once you start working on the account, you'd notice that or this can't be delivered, actually. So that's I think that's a big red flag for personally for me. And I think like promising rankings and, because look, it's a competitive space and, things can move up and down. So I think that's probably a red flag from my side. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, again, not to kind of say what you've just said, but it is about cultural fit and finding the agency that's right for your business. So, for example, we see, again, trying to be unbiased, but we see a lot of clients or potential clients that kind of suffer from big agency burnout, as we like to call it. It's where obviously they're wrapped up into, high level reporting, very kind of they're not malleable in terms of deliverables. It's XYZ in every month, and that's what you get, and then kind of don't speak to us outside of that, or if you want that, it's then extra. Or on the flip side of that, is you're working with a smaller agency who doesn't have the expertise to support you in these very kind of specific or niche scenarios. So it's really finding the agency which can kind of mirror your team, and like Syed was saying, is finding who you can work with. At the end of the day, it's about trust as well. I think that's what it comes down to. Is SEO is very much one of those things where things can be going right one month, next month not so right. So you have to have faith in the people you're working with, that they're doing the right things to, at the end of the day, or the end of it, is going to be obviously in a better position than where it started. And there's going to be peaks and dips, all over throughout it, and you need to keep that faith, I guess.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. So you mentioned something there around an SEO brief, and actually something I've not really considered. Obviously, when we're building sites, we're constantly stressing the importance of a brief and berating the lack of brief when people come to us and say, okay, we're looking for a website, I don't know what it needs to do or how it needs to do it, or actually what it needs to achieve. In terms of an SEO brief, if you were to break down the 5 fundamentals that an SEO brief must contain or should contain to qualify as a good brief, what would you say they are?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the brief, I think what's really important to know is like what your goals are. And typically, I think you'd probably see that like having a clear goal is typically missing sometimes from the brief generally, like whether the SEO or paid. I think that's a habit that us marketeers are kind of can be blamed for, but that's very important, like knowing what exactly you're going to go after. I think is the number one thing to consider when writing a brief. And then I think like clearly also breaking it down, making sure that internally what other stakeholders are trying to achieve as well. So SEO doesn't exist in a silo anymore. You can't really operate. So how do other channels kind of integrate with SEO? What are the other goals? So for example, like paid social has an impact on SEO massively. If you've got a new product and you're campaigning around that through paid social, how does that impact your SEO goals? The links that the quality of links that you're asking for, essentially. So it's not just about number of links, it's about the quality of links. What are your expectations essentially that you're looking to get? So yeah, these are the things that I would probably consider when writing an SEO brief.
That's perfect. Thank you. I think one thing I'm really keen to understand as well is around time frames. And again, it applies a lot in the web world when people come to you and expect you to achieve results in a week or a month or 2 months, etc. Is there through this kind of educational content, if there's a way to say to people, look, let's manage expectations there. Typically, you're looking for at least 3 to 6 months to start to see some tangible change. Is that a fair amount of time, or do people need to wait longer or shorter, or does it really depend on the keyword or phrase that you're going after?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where, like you said, it does depend, but I think within the first kind of 4 to 8 weeks, you should get a feeling of what's happening to the site, and there'll be changes to the site irrespective if there's performance gain. So you'll be able to see those kind of almost, after, I know there's the auditing kind of phase and researching and landscaping, that kind of thing. But as soon as that's done and things are actually going in, that should all be good. It's just me and you.
Well,
Nathan,
are you there? Yeah, potentially. I think we've lost Nathan. Yeah. So I guess, like, it goes back to, sorry, we thought we lost you, Nathan.
Yeah, I just disappeared. I've had enough of this, but no. Please carry on, guys. I was just talking about timeframes and just trying to understand. Like, let's just stop this whole we need it in a week situation, which is crippling the industry for those on both sides, right? E-commerce people essentially expecting results that quickly, and agencies berating waking up in the morning in fear of another email from clients saying it's now day 5. Am I now page 1 for a term which is incredibly competitive? Like, what are the kind of timeframes? I might have missed you guys giving that answer, but just to recap, how long should people be waiting?
Like I said, I think it depends on the term, but yeah, like I said, after the kind of initial auditing, landscaping phase is done, there'll be telltale signs that's happening on site, things getting changed, things getting optimized. So in reality, I would say, you should be waiting no longer than kind of 4 to 6 weeks to see, tangible changes on site. And then, the results may come, a few weeks, few months after that, but things should be moving in the right direction from then.
Yeah. I think just to add to that, Jack, I think the agencies are guilty of putting a lot of effort upfront, isn't it? Like, you spend a lot of time building tech audits and strategizing things that you actually lose focus on the quick wins. And I think, like, a few years ago, we changed our approach to become much more agile. And, this is going back to what I said about SEO. I kind of hate the fact that SEO is being kind of marked as like a long-term strategy. It is a long-term strategy, and there's no getting away with that. But there are things that you can do to deliver impact sooner, rather than just saying like, oh, by the way, you've got a contract with us. Forget you'll see the results for 6 months to 9 months, and we'll talk about results after that. That's kind of I think that's old school now. I think we can definitely do things that can potentially deliver impact, especially if a website or if an e-commerce business is already there for a bit, and you could potentially start delivering quick wins while you're doing your tech audits, essentially. And I think this is where the collaboration comes in as well. I think you need to find out, what does the resource look like at the client side, and if devs are available to, do stuff. And Jack, we've done that quite a few times now, isn't it? Rather than kind of waiting for us to pull something together like a strategy, and absolutely you need strategy, and we do that. We're quite big on that, but it's really important to be agile and start delivering the impact, because like Jack was saying, it's about trust as well. And you need to win the trust as soon as fair enough, you've done well in the pitch and you've secured the contract, but I think it's more about like, can we show you the results now as soon as possible? So I guess 4 to 8 weeks is pretty kind of, I think you should start kind of seeing something happening, going in a positive direction. That will give you a bit more of a confidence that what the SEO agency is doing is the right thing, basically.
That's perfect. I think I'm keen to pull it back to, again, those practical things people can take from today. And actually, I'm going to dive into a particular type of page, and this in particular is product pages. If you're looking to optimize your product pages, seeing those as arguably one of your most key pages on your website, where would you start in terms of from an SEO point of view? Is it looking at the product titles, the length of descriptions, the kind of variations, etc., or actually do you start somewhere else?
Yeah, so it is kind of what you said. It is titles, naming conventions, product descriptions, meta descriptions, all of that kind of on page, kind of normal optimization stance. So getting all that sorted. I think a big thing we see, especially in retail, is obviously duplication. So how you're handling multiple products, multiple product SKUs which are similar. So for example, coloring, sizing, if you're doing that through a single URL, or you're using kind of multiple URLs and actually handling that with canonical tags or any other way. So yeah, obviously it is primarily about on-page and targeting, and ensuring that the product page you are optimizing is the only page on site that's going to rank for the terms you're going after, and there's not a kind of 4 or 5 pages.
I'm going really left field here, and I'm looking at personalization. If you're looking to personalize page listings based at like a Nosto or something that essentially will maybe personalize the results you see based on your previous intent or buying behavior. How does that impact SEO, or how does a Google search engine know that actually there's a core and then there's all these different personalized variables depending on who you are, what your demographics are, and how you interact with other sites?
So yeah, I mean, it will just take out the original of that page, so disregarding all the user information anyway. So it shouldn't impact it really at all. If you're talking about personalization from a interaction level of the site, there shouldn't be much impact at all.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm whizzing through some quick-fire questions here. I've got another one here around breadcrumb trails. Still an important factor on a kind of e-com store, or actually dying away?
I think for us, obviously you can add scheme around that as well. So just a quick one there. But yeah, I think it's more for the user. And I think a lot of people will kind of tout the same, I say tout is a bad thing, but a lot of people will have the same mantra of doing things for the user, and obviously that contributing to positive SEO. And I think if it makes sense, yeah, definitely include it. There are a few nuances that you need to be aware of, such as loops and potential crawling issues. But most of the time, again, like Shopify, it will all be absolutely fine and work straight out of the box. So yeah, definitely include it. But is it going to be the thing that makes you appear on kind of position 1, page 1? Probably not.
Yeah. In terms of, another one of mine here is redirects. And again, I see people go from the sublime to the quite horrendous when it comes to redirects. Now, I know particularly in terms of the URL structure, that might be something that people discredit Shopify for sometimes in terms of the way it does its URL structure. Perhaps you could just share with the audience a bit around that, because if we're coming from a website or a platform that allows you to have / product name / something else, actually Shopify kind of limits you to that, or is that also a myth?
No, so there are some limitations, but again, not to keep plugging the white paper, but yeah, the white paper does go into a little bit more detail around how you can get away from the kind of default setup, which is your collection pages, or your collection URL string, I should say. So yeah, there's quite a bit that can be done there, and depending on what you're trying to do, I'm almost 99% sure in most cases you'll be able to get away from it. But yeah, it will require some custom work.
Perfect. And so just if anyone's unclear with that or unsure or worried about that, we encourage you to download the white paper, take a look. And then again, if they've got any questions after that, which still is not clear, contact yourselves or contact ourselves and we can help them with that. I'm interested to know, based on your guys, one more quick fire question, and then we'll go into 2021 and beyond. Site search and navigation. What's the importance of site search and the ability for a clear nav at the top? Is there any SEO benefits between having kind of mega menus versus this more traditional menu, etc.?
So I think navigation is probably the main point to talk about here. And obviously navigation is primarily one of the most important kind of aspects in terms of crawling and obviously the understanding of your site. So that's not to say you should be throwing every single page and category page into your navigation. It's more about taking stock of what you've got in terms of your categories. And I think when we talked about this right at the beginning of when we started this, Syed was talking about if you're working with kind of 500,000 SKUs, that you need to be looking at how you're categorizing those and then subcategorizing those. But yeah, the recommendation would always be to get as many kind of logical categories into your navigation and split it up. Again, that's usable for the user. You don't want something that's got 500 links in one tab, but having 20 in a logical format is absolutely fine and be great both for users and SEO. So anything to add to that? And as I know you're a big
I think the other angle to look at it is obviously SEO agency can do a bit of research and find out what the categorization should look like and what should go in mega menu. But from the business side of things, what do you think, or which categories do you think will bring most profit to the business, and potentially which categories will have a consistent stock availability over the course of the year? And I think those things can be factored into the decision making. But I think we do prefer mega menus as such, because that gives because of the way internal linking works and the internal architecture works, and the importance of certain bits that, if you're closer to the homepage, for example, the pages that are closer to the homepage get a bit more of an importance. We do prefer kind of, if you can build more categories that are important to the business into the menu, that's a preferable solution from us.
I was going to say just one last thing as well, just to again make it a little more actionable. Is one thing we regularly do is use some sort of user monitoring software, or kind of CRO for a better word. So Crazy Egg, Hotjar can all actually display what's being clicked on in the navs. You can even do it in analytics if you want. But yeah, Crazy Egg and Hotjar obviously out the box and can tell you that straight away. So using that, obviously you can start refining navigations and menus and that kind of thing based on your actual data, rather than making kind of good guesses based on research, keyword research, that kind of thing.
Guys, that's really helpful. Thank you. Conscious of time, and I still want to pick your brains for another 10 minutes, so bear with me. Next thing is on Shopify tagging. I go into some stores and see they've got 1,000 tags. Now, we know tags normally pull through to certain collections, but actually some people are tagging products, thinking that actually that may help with ranking. Is that true, or is that not true?
So it only is going to help if you create landing pages off of those tags. So if you're creating dynamic landing pages based off your dynamic tagging, then obviously it may help, because you can obviously create bespoke content. So if you've got jeans, you can then break it down into blue, dark jeans, ripped jeans, that kind of thing. So yeah, that obviously opens you up in terms of, imagine your net has suddenly just got wider because you've obviously got those more keywords. But we've actually used, and we're quite a big fan of, a plugin called Searchinize, I believe it's called. That essentially creates another index of your products, and works a bit like a search engine, and delivers more kind of functionality in terms of creating those landing pages, as well as being able to manipulate your filtering on the left-hand side, or actually depends on your theme, either left or on the top. And then, yeah, you can really start, powering up, for lack of a better word, your kind of product category pages even. So
that's awesome. Thank you. The next one is around 404 pages. Important just for a user experience, or actually any SEO benefit to be gleaned?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a 404, typically it will flag as an error, because obviously there's a dead end on your site, which won't be offering a great user experience to the user. Recommendations like any site is to remove the internal link, either update it to a page which now exists, or remove it altogether, and then 301 redirect that page. Obviously there are some unique cases or some more common cases like sale pages and that kind of thing, but typically, yeah, remove them from the site and then redirect them.
Perfect. You talked there around 301 redirects. Now obviously there's a few variations, whether it be 301, 302, etc. Perhaps you could just share with the audience the difference in where one applies and where the other applies.
Yeah, so 301 is a permanent redirect. So that's when you're saying this page no longer exists, please go to this one. And then 302 is temporary. So if something is down for a certain amount of time and it's coming back, then it means Google obviously can revisit that URL at some point. Again, there's a lot of talk around, migrations, where migrations have kind of been a little bit gone wrong when they're using 302s instead of 301s. But I would say 90% of the time when you're getting rid of a page, a 301 or 99% is going to be the correct choice.
And when you're doing redirects within Shopify, just doing it through the kind of navigation and adding redirects that way, or there's other areas to set up redirect to use an app or something like that?
Yeah, so again, good thing about Shopify, as soon as you remove a page, it actually asks you what you want to do with it. So it says, where do you want to redirect it to? So you can obviously say, to this page or to that category page, as well as when you update the URL, let's say you named it something different, it actually would create a redirect for you there as well. So there's quite a lot of functionality out of the box, which you can use to redirect your site.
We've just had a question in, gents, from James Davey, an e-commerce consultant we work very closely with, and co-founder of an agency called The Armory, which again we've worked together on several times. Now, a quick question from him around some of the redirect apps are more detrimental than beneficial, as they create two bounces versus sticking to core Shopify redirects. Do you suggest using the core Shopify redirects, or actually are there any redirect apps that stop that kind of double bounce or two bounce situation?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, I personally haven't looked into kind of redirection apps, but I do know that, yeah, obviously it's needed when you're doing a large or, a big scale redirect kind of project and you're really getting into it. But yeah, that would be needed to obviously have a look on the App Store, see what's available, and then really dig into your needs. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't really give much more information on that.
That's fine. I'll happily have a look with you guys. But essentially, we're saying that Shopify redirects natively without an app is actually more than capable to do a large portion of what you're looking to do as a retailer.
Yeah, I think the only problem you're going to run into is when you're doing a really kind of large scale. That's when you're going to have to start looking at apps and that kind of thing.
So if we're looking at seasonal pages, and I'm talking your Christmas pages, your Easter pages, that kind of thing, Christmas page maybe runs October through to December, and then essentially it comes down in Jan. Now, do you set up a 302 and essentially say this page is no longer there, but it's going to be back? Or what do you do in that case when you've got those seasonal pages that will come round, but potentially it's going to be an 8 to 9 month window until it's visible again?
Yeah, so it's quite a bit of a topic. I mean, and it always kind of rears around every so often. But I think we're of the opinion, and it depends who you speak to, but I think we're of the opinion that you keep it live, have a kind of normal text message, which just says, we'll be back in X amount of time, revisit us, on Black Friday, that kind of thing, and leave it up. That obviously allows you to keep all your kind of authority and your kind of relevance there throughout the year. And then when it's there, you're not having to play around with bringing the page back up, or, there's sometimes issues where people are just creating new URLs for old sale events, that kind of thing. So just maintaining your sale pages throughout the year is definitely the recommendation that we would kind of suggest.
Thank you, guys. And in terms of finishing thoughts, I appreciate I've just bombarded you with stuff there as I got into the flow, but really understanding where SEO is going from 2021 and beyond. For some people listening, perhaps they've just gone in as a placement as a marketing manager or e-com director or e-com manager, and they want to take some ideas to their senior leadership team to seem proactive. A topic might be around SEO, but actually of where it's heading and where they can identify opportunities. Where is SEO heading, or where do we think it's heading based on your guys' knowledge? And what kind of things could they take to their board to say, look, out the box, we're doing X. I know that SEO is going here in 2021 and beyond. I think we should be looking at Y.
Maybe I can start. So yeah, I think a couple of things that have recently been announced by Google lately, are around introducing augmented reality, and 3D markup into the search directly. And I think that really forces us to think about website as a data kind of hub or a repository where, it's not just about one interface or two interfaces. How would you take your inventory to various devices, essentially, and also including Internet of Things in there. It's kind of the growth we've seen, like the speakers, the screens, the autonomous vehicles that will come out. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, I think thinking about website or your inventory and the feeds that you're creating, and empowering those feeds so that the algorithms can really understand the context of the data that you're offering is going to be the key, at least in my opinion. I think that's where I think the focus should be beyond what we are currently doing.
And Jack, what about yourself?
Yeah, I guess in more of a kind of the short term is just looking at cross-device, like Syed saying, the different screens that are now available to us. Obviously, mobiles kind of going super small, now super big, screen sizes, and also internet speeds like 5G coming in. Yeah. So I think it's all just going to be around how people are accessing the site or your app, and then working towards those. In terms of future advancements, there's so much going on; it's hard to say, but. Yeah, just keeping abreast with what kind of Google's doing, and even Apple. Apple are coming, so think about how that's going to be kind of influence the market when that happens.
Well, I mean, that's interesting, right? To see if Apple will take a play at that, but also in terms of Google and SEO, final thing from me in our last 30 seconds is really understanding if people want to keep up with Google and all of their changes, where is the kind of central place to go to make sure you're in the know when these new algorithms or new ideas get talked about?
So for purely SEO, just something like Search Engine Land, well, or even just on the Google's own Twitter. Obviously, they do announce a lot of things now, or sometimes depending on how they're feeling. So yeah, any kind of search engine blogs or feeds, are often agencies even, are often the best places to start.
Gents, massive thank you for today. We're exactly 1 hour and 7 seconds. I'm sorry about the little technical hitch at the start, but we got there in the end, and actually some hugely valuable content. For those that are listening, I hope you've enjoyed today's LinkedIn Live as we talk about the powers of SEO underneath Shopify and how you can kind of unlock those benefits. It would be wrong of us not to plug the kind of white paper that we've collectively put together, and Jack very kindly weaved in a couple of times in his answers. So do check out the Shopify white paper we put together, talking about the benefits of SEO and Shopify kind of combined. And if anyone does have any questions, then please do reach out to the team at Honcho. I dare say it's okay to connect with you guys on LinkedIn or go through the website direct and essentially get in touch. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care.
Brilliant. Thank you.